She hadn't knocked yet. That was the thing she'd keep coming back to, later. The fact that she stood in that hallway for what felt like 4 full minutes, the wallet in her hand, the overhead light buzzing faintly above her head, and she did not knock. She read the name on the small brass plate beside the door. She read it once. She read it twice. She read it a third time as though the letters might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Something she could carry back down the stairs and release into the gray Portland afternoon without consequence. I, Voss. Calla Reed had last seen that name 7 years ago, printed in small serif font on a birthday card she had not been invited to sign. She had stood in the doorway of the office break room, watching everyone crowd around the cake, watching Dana light the candles, and she had understood, with the quiet, boneless certainty of someone who has just missed a step in the dark, that this was over, that she had already lost something she hadn't known was ending. The hallway smelled like old wood and someone's dinner, garlic, something warm. Apartment 2B had a wreath on the door. Apartment 2A had a pair of rain boots beside the mat, small, a child's. And apartment 2C had a brass plate that said, I, Voss, and behind it, maybe 15 feet of air and drywall separating Calla from 7 years of silence. She knocked. Not because she had decided to. Not because she had reasoned her way through it, or weighed the options or landed on the right answer. She knocked the way you grab a railing in the dark, reflexively before the thinking starts. And then the door opened, and the floor, in a very quiet and absolute way, was gone. Before we go any further, if this story is already doing something to your chest, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. There are stories like this one, and ones far more intense, waiting for you on Patreon. Stories that can't be told on YouTube. Exclusive, uncensored, and made for people who actually feel things. The link is in the video description and pinned in the first comment. Now, back to that hallway. To understand what happened when that door opened, you have to go back 7 years. You have to go back to a Tuesday in October that looked very much like this one. The sky low and gray over Portland, the leaves on hawthorn pressing themselves flat against the wet sidewalk. And you have to go back to a woman named Calla Reed, at 25, who had just been hired by a mid-size architecture firm called Pelletier and Dana Associates, and who was, by her own estimation, reasonably fine. Reasonably fine was what Calla did. She had grown up in a house where emotions were managed the way you manage a slow leak, quietly, efficiently, before it could become someone else's problem. Her mother was an accountant. Her father had been a Marine for 12 years. The Reed household ran on clean surfaces and closed doors, and Calla had carried that architecture into adulthood without ever quite noticing she'd done it. She kept a tight apartment in the Buckman neighborhood. She color-coded her project folders. She was, by any observable metric, together. What she was not, and this was the thing she kept in the deepest possible drawer, was good at staying. She had left 3 cities before Portland. She had left 2 relationships before they could leave her. She had a pattern she didn't have a name for yet, which was this. The moment something mattered enough to hurt, she began, very quietly, to prepare an exit. She had been at Pelletier and Dana Associates for 6 weeks when she met Iris Voss. Iris worked 2 floors up, in the agency that shared the building, a branding and design studio called Lumen Creative. She had no reason to be in the architecture firm's kitchen at 7:40 in the morning, and she offered no explanation for being there, just reached past Calla for the sugar with a focused, unapologetic economy of movement that suggested she had decided, somewhere along the way, that the world was easier if you simply did the thing you needed to do. "Sorry," she said. "Not sorry at all." "It's fine," Calla said. Iris looked at her then. Actually looked, the way most people don't, a full second of attention, and said, "You're new downstairs. 6 weeks. Do they still have the broken chair in the conference room?" Calla blinked. "The one with the one that leans. Nobody fixes it because everyone thinks someone else is going to. It's still there." Iris made a sound that was almost a laugh. It was there when I started. That chair has outlasted 3 project managers and a full rebrand. She took her coffee and she left, and Calla stood in the kitchen for a moment longer than necessary, holding her mug, thinking about the chair. That was how it started. Not with a declaration, not with a moment of revelation. It started with a broken chair and a woman who noticed things, and it built the way real things build, slowly, in the spaces between other things, in the Tuesday mornings, and the shared elevator rides, and the lunch hours that started as coincidence, and became, eventually, something they were both quietly engineering without saying so. By December, they had a routine. By February, it had a name, though neither of them used it out loud. By March, Iris had a key to Calla's apartment that she'd been given for plant watering purposes, and had never given back. And Calla had stopped leaving her running shoes at her own place because she always ended up needing them at Iris's. Dana Fitch noticed. Dana noticed everything. It was what made her a good architect and a complicated mentor. She had hired Calla for her precision, her portfolio, her ability to hold a client's vision and a structural reality in the same breath. But she had kept Calla close because she recognized something in her that she recognized in herself. A woman who had built very careful walls and was terrified of what happened when someone found the door. "Be careful," Dana said once. Just that. They were reviewing plans for a kitchen renovation in Lake Oswego, and out of nowhere, between the island dimensions and the window placement, Dana had said it. Calla had not asked what she meant. She should have asked. The thing about Iris Voss was that she was not easy. She was not the soft, accommodating kind of person that Calla's careful nature might have chosen if she'd been choosing carefully. Iris had opinions she would defend past the point of comfort. She went quiet when she was hurt instead of saying so, and the silences had a shape and a weight that took Calla months to learn to read. She rearranged Calla's kitchen the first time she cooked there, and did not apologize for it. She cried at documentaries about animal migrations and refused to discuss it afterward. She was also the most fully present person Calla had ever been in a room with. When Iris listened to you, you felt listened to in your bones. When she laughed at something you said, you felt genuinely funny. When she looked at you, the way she'd looked at Calla in that kitchen on the first morning, it was like being seen in a resolution you hadn't known you were capable of. Calla had spent 25 years building rooms with no windows. Iris walked in and opened everything. It should have been simple. It was not simple. Because Calla, true to form, had begun the preparation before she even knew she was doing it. It started in the small ways. A dinner she didn't text to say she'd be late for. A weekend trip she booked without mentioning it first, to see a friend in Seattle. Legitimate, real, nothing wrong with it, except that she hadn't told Iris until the night before, and the look on Iris's face had been something that Calla filed away instead of addressing. A pattern of availability that had one barely perceptible gap in it, like the thread count in a fabric that looks fine until you hold it up to light. She was not pulling away. She was installing a fire exit. The difference from inside the relationship was invisible. From outside, from where Dana was watching, it was not. And Dana, who loved Calla the way you love someone who reminds you of your worst mistakes, made a decision. She made it in March, 7 years ago, on a Wednesday afternoon, when Iris had come downstairs to return a book she'd borrowed from the firm's library. Dana had intercepted her in the lobby. The conversation had lasted 9 minutes. Calla had been in a client meeting 3 floors up, drawing sightlines for a living room she'd never see built, and she hadn't known the conversation was happening. She still didn't know. Not the version that had actually occurred. What Calla knew, what she had believed for 7 years, was this: that Iris had come to the office to end things. That Dana had told her Iris had said she felt the relationship moving too fast, that she needed space, that she wasn't sure. That Calla, handed this information like a verdict, had done what Calla did. She had organized it, processed it, and left. She had given Iris exactly what she'd supposedly asked for. She had been so efficient about it that Iris hadn't even had time to realize what was happening before Calla was already gone, out of the routines, out of the mornings, out of the key and running shoes kind of life they'd been building. She had been so proud of herself for not making it ugly. She had spent 7 years believing it hadn't been her fault. The wallet was a brown leather bifold, worn soft at the corners, with a Portland Trailblazers loyalty card tucked into the first sleeve, beside a library card and $43 in cash. Calla had found it on the sidewalk in front of Kawava Coffee, wedged between the metal grate of a street tree and the base of a bike rack, half hidden under a wet ginkgo leaf. She had almost kept walking. It was raining. She had a site visit in 40 minutes. The wallet had nothing to do with her. She had picked it up anyway. It was the kind of thing she did, not out of virtue exactly, but out of a deep and slightly compulsive need to return things to where they belonged. Objects, borrowed items, borrowed time. If something wasn't hers, she couldn't rest with it on her conscience. Her therapist, years ago, had called it a displacement behavior. Calla had called it being a decent person, and left it at that. She opened the wallet to find an ID, standard procedure. She would take it to the nearest police station or look up a phone number, or the driver's license was Oregon issued. The photo was small and slightly blurred, the way DMV photos always are, but the face was unmistakable. The name printed beneath it in clean black letters was Iris M. Voss. The address was 2 blocks away. Calla stood on the wet sidewalk for a long moment, rain collecting in the collar of her jacket, holding a wallet that belonged to the woman she had loved at 25 and never entirely stopped, in a way she would not name, and she thought, I could take this to the police station. She thought, I absolutely should take this to the police station. She thought, there are $43 in here and a library card, and I am already wet, and the police station is 12 minutes in the wrong direction. She walked 2 blocks north and found the building, a converted Victorian, 3 stories, the kind of structure she would have photographed on a different day for reference files. She went inside. She climbed 1 flight. She stood in the hallway outside apartment 2C and read the name on the brass plate 3 times and did not knock. And then she knocked. Iris opened the door in paint-stained jeans and a gray thermal she'd pushed the sleeves up on, and she was holding a mug in one hand and a stylus in the other, and her hair was in a knot that had been imperfect for hours. And she looked at Calla the way you look at something you see correctly, but cannot make parse, a foreign word in a familiar sentence. Her eyes went to the wallet, then back to Calla's face, then to the wallet again. I found it, Calla said. In front of Kawava. There's $43. I checked the ID because I needed the address. I wasn't. Calla. Her name in Iris's mouth was a different shape than it was in anyone else's. It always had been. Hi, Calla said. Hi, Iris said. They stood there. The door was open. The apartment behind Iris was warm and lit from within, and Calla could see the edge of a desk covered in sketches, a half-eaten bowl of something on the coffee table, a blanket pulled to the end of the couch. Evidence of a Tuesday afternoon in someone else's life. Evidence of a life. Do you want... Iris started. I should go, Calla said. Right. Neither of them moved. The rain had picked up outside. Down the stairwell, the front door opened and shut. Someone coming in, shaking off the wet footsteps on the landing below. Calla became aware of how she was standing, how she had positioned her body slightly angled toward the exit, already halfway gone, the way she always was. She made herself stand straight. I'm sorry, she said, for just showing up. I tried to think of another way, but your number isn't... I don't have... You could have dropped it off with the building manager. A beat. Yeah, Calla said. I could have. Something moved across Iris's face. Not quite a smile, not quite anything with a name. She stepped back from the door. She did not say, come in. She left the door open and walked back into her apartment, and that was the same thing. Calla followed. The apartment was the kind of place that tells you everything about a person if you know how to read it. And Calla, who had spent 11 years learning how spaces hold the lives inside them, read it immediately. The walls were a warm off-white that Iris had definitely painted herself, because no landlord chose that tone. The art was large and deliberate, a framed print of a Kiki Smith lithograph, 2 original pieces that Calla didn't recognize but suspected were Iris's own work. The bookshelves were organized not alphabetically but by color, which was completely irrational and completely Iris. The desk by the window was chaos. The rest of the apartment was not. Iris set her mug on the kitchen counter and turned around. She had not offered Calla coffee. She had not offered her a seat. They were standing 8 feet apart in a small apartment in Portland, and 7 years sat between them like furniture nobody wanted to move around. "How long have you been in Portland?" Iris asked. 3 years. Something flickered. 3 years. I know. You've been here for 3 years and we've... Iris stopped, pressed her thumb against the edge of the counter. Okay. I didn't know you were here, Calla said. I swear. I looked you up years ago. I looked you up and LinkedIn said you were in Seattle. I was. I moved. I know now. Calla looked at the wallet still in her hand. She set it on the kitchen island. I didn't come here because I wanted to. I did, but not... She stopped. She was not a woman who fumbled sentences. She fumbled this one. I'm sorry. This was probably a terrible idea. Probably, Iris said. Then... Do you want coffee? They sat at Iris's kitchen table with coffee. Neither of them was drinking, and the afternoon light moved across the room in increments, and they talked around the thing for 20 minutes before Iris put her mug down and said, without preamble, Why did you disappear? Calla looked up. I've thought about it for 7 years, Iris said. Her voice was even. Iris did not do dramatic. She did precise. I've had versions of this conversation in my head for 7 years. I'm not going to waste whatever this is being careful. She folded her hands on the table. You were there and then you weren't. And I know what I did. I know I pulled back that spring. I know I got scared and I went quiet when I should have talked. And I've had to sit with that. But you didn't give me a chance to fix it. You just... left. Without saying it was over. Without saying anything. You were just gone. Calla was quiet for a moment. Dana told me, she said. Iris frowned. Dana told you what? That you'd come to the office. In March. That you'd told her you needed space. That it was moving too fast. The silence that followed was a different quality than the silences before it. This one had a shape. This one had weight. I went to the office in March, Iris said slowly. I know. I went to tell Dana. Iris stopped. Why would I tell Dana anything about us? I didn't even know her. Calla felt something cold begin at the base of her sternum. She said you came to see her. She said you'd asked to talk to her because you weren't sure how to tell me, and you wanted... She stopped. She said you'd asked for her advice. Calla. Iris's voice was very careful. I went to the office to return a book. I talked to Dana for maybe 10 minutes in the lobby. I didn't ask her for advice about anything. I didn't tell her anything about us. A pause. What exactly did she say I said? The cold spread. That you felt it was moving too fast, that you needed space. And you believed her. She was my mentor. She'd known me for months. She had no reason to... What did I tell you in February? Iris said. When you asked me if this was real. What did I say? Calla remembered. She had not forgotten. It was February, a Sunday. They were in bed with the window cracked because Iris always wanted air, and Calla had asked it half asleep, not meaning to. "Is this real for you?" And Iris had turned and looked at her and said, without any hedging, without any softening, "Yes. This is the most real thing I've been in." She had said that. Calla had heard it. And then she had filed it in the same drawer where she kept everything that mattered and was therefore dangerous. And 6 weeks later, Dana had told her what Iris had supposedly said, and the drawer had been the first thing she'd closed. Because it was easier to believe Dana than to believe the drawer. "She lied," Calla said. It was not a question. Iris looked at her across the table. "I don't know why she would, but I know what I said and didn't say." Calla's chair scraped back slightly. She was not standing up. She was gripping the table edge, which was the opposite. But her body had done something instinctive and bracing, the way bodies do when the ground is about to move. "She told me you needed space, and I gave you space." Her voice was very flat. "I gave you 7 years of space. I know. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was respecting what you wanted. I know. Iris. I know." Iris's voice did not break. It compressed. The way pressure compresses things. Denser, harder, but not broken. "Calla. I know. I spent the first year waiting for you to explain. The second year being angry. The third year convincing myself I'd misread the whole thing. The fourth year..." She stopped, shook her head. "I'm not telling you what the fourth year was." Calla let out a long breath. The rain against the window was steady now. The kind of Portland rain that doesn't perform, just arrives and stays. The coffee in her mug had gone cold. "Why would she do that?" Calla said. "Dana. Why would she?" "You'd have to ask her. I'm asking you." "I told you I don't know." Iris picked up her mug and looked into it without drinking. "But you knew me. For 2 years you knew me. And you chose her version." That landed where it was aimed. "I know," Calla said. They sat with it. Outside, a door opened and closed. Music started faintly from the apartment above, something with guitar, too quiet to name. "I looked you up too," Iris said. "After. LinkedIn, Instagram, the firm's website. For about a year I looked. And? You're good at disappearing." Calla thought of the cities she'd left, the rooms she'd organized before walking out, the fire exits she'd installed before she knew she needed them. "I know," she said again. Iris looked at her. "Do you do that with everyone?" A beat. "I've gotten better," Calla said. "That's not an answer." "No, I've gotten better. That's the answer. It took..." She stopped. She was not going to list the cost of it here, in this kitchen, 20 minutes into an accidental reunion on a Tuesday afternoon. "It took a while, but I got better." Iris studied her in that way she had, the full second look that saw more than most people managed in an hour. Then she nodded once, as though she'd asked a question she hadn't voiced, and gotten an answer she decided to accept provisionally. "I called Dana," she said, "about 8 months after you left. I wanted to know if she knew where you'd gone. I thought..." She stopped. "She said you'd asked to be transferred. She said you'd wanted a fresh start. I never asked to be transferred. I know that now." The cold that had started in Calla's sternum had become something structural. She was building a shape from the pieces as they came. 9 minutes in a lobby, a conversation Calla had not known about, 2 versions of the same story with no overlap at all. And the shape it was making was something she did not want to name yet. "She told you I'd asked to leave." "Yes." "And you stopped looking." Iris was quiet. "Iris." "Yes," Iris said. "I stopped looking. If this story is pulling you under a little, that's the point." There's a whole world of stories like this one on Patreon, where we go further than YouTube allows. Exclusive, uncensored, the ones that stay with you. Link is in the description and pinned in the first comment. Now let's finish this. The thing about the moment Kala had been living in for the past hour, sitting at a kitchen table in an apartment she'd found by accident, drinking cold coffee, rebuilding a history she'd thought she understood, was that it had a shape she'd seen before. She had stood in a hallway and read a name 3 times and not knocked. She had known, in some organ below thought, below language, what was behind that door. She had knocked anyway. There are moments that look like accidents that are not. There are things you pick up off the sidewalk that you picked up because some part of you already knew whose they were. She thought of Dana's face that day, the careful way she delivered the news, the hand on Kala's arm, the tone of someone managing a difficult situation with great competence. She had never questioned it. Dana had been older, wiser, more experienced, and she had told Kala a story that made terrible sense. The story was, you're pulling away, and she knows it, and she's doing you a kindness by ending it cleanly. The story was, this is the exit you were already building. The story was, now you can go. What the story had actually been? Permission. Dana had handed her permission she hadn't asked for, to do the thing she'd already been preparing to do, and Kala had taken it without examining the source, because the source had known exactly where she was weak. She pushed her chair back and stood up. Not to leave. She walked to the window that looked out over the street and pressed one hand flat against the glass, feeling the cold of the rain through it. She saw me pulling back, Kala said. Before it happened. She told me to be careful. What? In February. Before the lobby. She looked at me across a set of kitchen plans and she said, be careful. And I didn't ask her what she meant. She turned around. Iris was watching her from the table. I think she thought she was protecting me. I think she looked at me and saw someone who was going to blow up something good by leaving, and she thought if she accelerated the ending, she could spare us both the uglier version. Iris was silent. That doesn't make it okay, Kala said. No. I'm not defending her. I know. But I also, Kala's voice caught once, and she steadied it. I also chose to believe her. That's mine. I could have come to you directly, and I didn't. I could have asked you, and I didn't. I believed the easy version of the story because the easy version meant I didn't have to figure out what I was doing. She looked at Iris. Iris, sitting at her own kitchen table in her paint-stained jeans, her coffee cold, her afternoon completely dismantled, looking back at Kala with the expression of someone who has been braced against a wall for so long that the wall itself has become structural. I'm sorry, Kala said. It was not the speech. It was not a prepared statement. It was 2 words in a small kitchen in Portland in the rain, and it was the truest thing she had said in 7 years. Iris looked at her for a long time. I know, she said finally. Then quieter. I know you are. The apartment held them both. The music from upstairs had changed to something slower. Outside, the rain moved through the ginkgo trees on the block, and the leaves came down in 1s and 2s, settling on the wet pavement below. Kala thought of the sidewalk in front of Kauava, the wallet half hidden under a leaf, the $43 she hadn't touched. The small ordinary thing that had brought her here. What happened to us? Iris said slowly. Wasn't just Dana. You know that. I know. You were leaving before she helped you leave. I know. I was going quiet when I should have said things out loud. I know that too. So. Iris folded her hands on the table. She had a way of landing on a word that made it a place, not just a sound. So. Kala looked at the wallet on the island. The worn leather corners. The Trailblazers card. I should give that back to you, she said. You already did. A pause. I meant the wallet. I know what you meant. Iris stood up. She went to the island and picked up the wallet and held it for a moment, turning it over once. Then she set it back down. She didn't look at Calla when she said it. She said it to the window. Don't go yet. Calla went still. I'm not asking for... Iris stopped. Started again. I'm not asking for anything. I don't know what this is. I don't know what you being here means or what I wanted to mean or what any of this can be, because we just spent an hour taking apart 7 years and I haven't had time to decide what to do with any of it. She turned. But I'm not ready for you to go yet, so don't. Calla stood at the window. The cold of the glass was still in her palm. She thought of all the exits she had built, all the doors she had left through before they could be closed on her, all the careful preparations, all the clean departures, all the rooms she had left behind in good order, because leaving things in good order was the only way she knew to say she'd been there at all. She thought of a hallway and a brass plate, and a name she hadn't been able to walk away from. She crossed the room and sat back down at the table. Okay, she said. Iris sat down across from her. Neither of them spoke. The rain came down. The music played upstairs. The wallet sat on the island, returned, its $43 intact, the library card undisturbed. Outside, the ginkgo tree gave up another leaf. They sat. An hour meant different things to different silences. There were silences that contracted time, and silences that expanded it, and the silence in that kitchen was the expanding kind, full of questions neither of them asked, and answers neither of them was ready to give, and something else underneath those, smaller and more fragile, that might have been the first inch of something new, or might have been just the echo of something old. Calla didn't know. That was the honest answer. She didn't know. She had spent 11 years as a woman who read spaces, who understood the logic of rooms, who could look at a floor plan and tell you immediately where the light would fall and where the shadows would be. And she could not read this. She could not look at the inch of space between her and Iris across this kitchen table and tell you with any certainty what was in it. She knew what she wanted to be in it. But wanting was different from knowing, and she had learned, the hard way and in multiple time zones, that the gap between those two things was where everything fell. Iris refilled both their coffees without asking. She did it the way she did everything, with a focused, unapologetic economy of movement, as though she had decided the world was easier if you simply did the thing. She set Calla's mug back in front of her. You're still doing the architecture thing, Iris said. Interiors now. Residential, mostly. Calla wrapped her hands around the mug. You're still doing branding. Creative director now. I run the place. I'm not surprised. A small pause. Not uncomfortable. Almost something else. Are you happy? Iris asked. It was a direct question from a woman who asked direct questions, and it deserved a direct answer. And the direct answer was more complicated than a single word could hold. Calla thought about her apartment in the Selwood neighborhood, which she had renovated herself over 18 months, and which she loved in the specific way you love a thing you have made exactly right. She thought about the projects she was proud of, and the client she'd fired last month for reasons of basic dignity. She thought about her friendships, which were real and maintained with some effort. She thought about the things she still didn't do well. The fire exits she still sometimes built before she needed them. The distances she still sometimes kept for reasons that had more to do with fear than with sense. Getting there, she said. Iris considered this. That's a better answer than fine. I know. I'm getting there too, Iris said. In case you were going to ask. I was. I know. Outside, the rain had eased to something thinner, a mist more than a proper downpour. The afternoon light had shifted from gray to the particular amber that happens in Portland in October when the clouds thin just before dusk, and it came through the window across the table and landed between them like something that wasn't trying to say anything, and therefore said everything. Calla looked at the wallet on the island. She looked at Iris. 7 years is a long time to carry a story you don't know the full shape of. 7 years of believing one version of a thing, and then one Tuesday afternoon with a wet ginkgo leaf and a leather bifold and a flight of stairs. And the version shifts. The shape changes. You look at the same facts from a different angle, and suddenly the shadow they cast is completely different. She did not know what happened next. She did not know if next was even the right concept, if this afternoon was a beginning or a reckoning or a kind of closing that felt open. She did not know if the hour she'd agreed to stay would stretch into something, or if they would drink their coffee and talk about small things, and she would go home to Selwood, and Iris would go back to her desk, and the wallet would be a thing they told people about someday, separately, at different dinner tables, a small, strange story about the time they ran into each other again. She did not know. She noticed that not knowing did not make her want to leave. That was new. That was, in the particular and personal arithmetic of Calla Reed, enormous. She picked up her coffee. The mug was warm. Across the table, Iris was looking at her with the full second look, the one that saw more than most people managed in an hour, and Calla looked back. Not angled toward the exit, not already halfway gone. She looked back. There are things we return and things we don't. There are wallets, and there are years, and there are versions of ourselves we left in cities we don't live in anymore, and we cannot go back to retrieve them. The woman Calla had been at 25, the one with the color-coded folders and the fire exits, and the extraordinary, terrible efficiency of her departures. That woman was not recoverable. She had been replaced gradually and imperfectly by someone who had done the work of learning to stay. It is slow work. It is unspectacular. There is no moment where you finish it. What there is, sometimes, if you're paying attention, if you pick things up off the sidewalk and climb flights of stairs and stand in hallways long enough, is a door that opens. And behind it, a woman with paint-stained jeans and an imperfect knot in her hair and 7 years of her own she's been carrying, who says don't go yet, and you get to decide, in that instant, whether you're still the person who was always already leaving, or whether this is the day you aren't. Calla stayed. An hour. Maybe more. The wallet sat on the island, returned to where it belonged. Whether anything else would be, that was a question the afternoon was not ready to answer. And maybe that was fine. Maybe that was exactly right. Some things take longer than an hour. Some things take exactly as long as they take, and the only wrong move is to leave before you know. Whatever this was, she was in it. For now, for the length of a cup of coffee, and then, if they wanted, for whatever came after. It was the most present Calla Reed had been in 7 years. Outside, Portland kept raining, and neither of them moved toward the door. If this story stayed with you, if it found something in you that didn't have a name yet, that's what this channel is for. And if you want to go deeper, the link to our Patreon is in the video description and pinned in the first comment. On Patreon, we tell the stories we can't tell here. Exclusive, uncensored, the ones that go further. Leave your like. Share this with someone who needed to hear it today. And tell me in the comments, have you ever returned something, an object, a feeling, a person, and found something you didn't expect on the other side? I want to read every answer.